Hello and welcome back to the course on blockchain. And today we're going to look at the world of transactions and UTXOs in blockchain. So it's a very interesting field, a very interesting concept, and I never thought it was this different to normal transactions, but it actually is a whole new world, and today we're going to uncover everything. All right, so let's get started. Transactions and UTXOs. So we'll find out what UTXO stands for in a second. For now, let's imagine that we start off with some transactions. So after I started using Bitcoin, I received the following transactions. So Mark sent me 0.1 Bitcoin, Adlan sent me 0.3 Bitcoin, Ellen sent me 0.6 Bitcoin, and Susan sent me 0.7 Bitcoin. So all of those are different transactions that happened in the Bitcoin blockchain, and they are all related to me. I received Bitcoins in all those transactions. And so what those would be called in the Bitcoin world are UTXOs, which stands for unspent transaction outputs. And this is where things start to get very different to the world of banking that we're so used to. So in banking, once you send a transaction, that's it. The transaction is done, and it's recorded somewhere and so on. But in Bitcoin, a transaction lives on after it's been executed until another transaction builds off of the UTXO from that transaction. I know it's a lot to take in at the start, but let's go step by step. So let's say I've received all this money, and now I want to buy a bicycle. I want to buy a bicycle for 0.5 BTC. So this is how we're going to now set up the transaction. We need to set up a transaction for that to happen. This is what it will look like. So I'm going to take not just my money and use it. I need to choose the transactions. Remember, we said that they live on until these UTXOs have been used up. So I need to choose the transactions that I'm going to link into the inputs. So there's our inputs, where I'm going to get the money. I can't just go into my wallet, and we'll see why in the wallet tutorial that there is no such a thing. This is what's important to understand, that in Bitcoin, there is no such a thing, or in any cryptocurrency, there is no such a thing as an amount lying in your account. There is no account. Everything we have, all we have is a blockchain, and all of the transactions, all of any money, any movement of money is a transaction on the blockchain. So we need to go back to transactions and pick the ones we want. So we're going to pick the 0.6 BTC from Ellen that I received. So I need to come up with 0.5 BTC. This is everything I have available. So I'm going to take this one because it's the closest to 0.5. I'm going to take the 0.6 BTC I received from Helen, and then I'm going to send 0.5 BTC to the bike shop. And the rule is that there cannot be any unused outputs. So anything that goes into the or there cannot be any unused input. So anything that goes into input, the full amount has to go into the output. Basically, there can be no change. You cannot just go in and say, all right, I have 0.6 BTC, I'm sending 0.5 BTC. No, you have to send all of the 0.6. But you can send it to different participants. So what you do is you'd send 1.1 BTC back to myself. I know it sounds very confusing, but once we do a couple of examples, you will see the logic behind it, and you will see why it works. So there we go. So I have to choose one or several of the transactions that I have here to put in my input. So I have to build my input to get to this amount or higher. Then I need to send the required amount for the merchandise, for the bike that I'm buying, to the bike shop. And then any change that I want to, that I have left, I cannot just leave it there. I have to send it to myself again. I have to send it back or I can buy something else from another shop. And we'll see an example like that later on. But for now, this is how it goes. So 0.6 BTC, this transaction I'm putting in here. So this transaction happened. And then, so this new transaction is piggybacking on this transaction. So the transaction kind of like continues on and on and on and on. Like, so this transaction now feeds into this transaction. And then, and now after that happens, now it's gone, it's finished, it's completed. that's probably not the right word. It's no longer a UTXO. It's not an unspent transaction output because it's done. This transaction fed this transaction we're building here. And now we have two new UTXOs. This is a UTXO for the bike shop. So, and that's a UTXO for me. So that amount is going to go into the UTXOs for the bike shop. And this is going to go into here. And there you go. And also I'm going to get a bike. That's what I was buying once everything is settled. And so what we'll see here, now if we create the list of UTXOs, we'll see that that transaction with Ellen is gone. But now I have another UTXO from me to me, a transaction of 0.1 BTC that is unspent. It has an unspent transaction output. All right, so that was our example with the bicycle. Let's have a look at another example to kind of like concrete these things in. Let's say that now I want to buy a second bicycle. Let's say that first one was for me, and now I want to buy a bicycle for my dad. And what is this transaction going to look like? How are we going to create the transaction? The bicycle is more expensive, 1.1 BTC. So if you want, you can pause the video now and try this for yourself. Try practice it and see how to create it. If you don't worry about like the overall meaning of all of it, it's very easy to construct it. You just put the inputs, calculate the outputs, and send the change to yourself if there's any change. And it's very simple. And then once you've done that, and once we do it a couple of times, it'll become very clear after a while why it's working that way. So feel free to pause the video, but otherwise I'm going to continue. So here's our transaction. How are we going to construct it? We need an input. We need inputs, right? Again, we cannot just go to our account and say, I'm taking this much money out of my account. It doesn't work that way. We have to finish off. We have to, what's a good analogy? Like, we have to kill off, I guess. We have to kill off these UTXOs that we have left. So they're just sitting there, and these transactions, the only way they will come to an end is when they feed new transactions. So this is a transaction that we're going to be building. Who's going to feed it? Well, we need to build quite a large amount. So we're going to take this transaction over here. We'll take the UTXO from this transaction. So the 0.3 BTC I got from Adlan. It'll feed, so this transaction will feed into the one we're building. The 0.7 BTC from Susan will feed into the transaction we're building. And the 0.1 BTC that I sent to myself will also feed into this transaction. So we got three inputs. And now the output is, as you can see, it's a total, is exactly what we need. Output is going to all go to the bike shop. There's nothing left, so we don't need to add any additional outputs. There's no change to send to ourselves. And that's it. That's how we're going to structure the transaction. And once this transaction goes in the blockchain, this will be removed. This will be, well, it won't be removed. It will just no longer be considered a UTXO because it will be obvious that this transaction, they later fed into this transaction. This transaction later fed into this, and this transaction fed into that one. So there no longer is anything left. And on the other hand, the bike shop will have a UTXO. The bike shop will have received this money, and now they have, as the result of this transaction, the bike shop has a UTXO, and that will go into their, it'll go into the blockchain, but whenever they calculate the UTXOs, they'll see this as a UTXO until it feeds into something else. And I will get a bike. And so now, if we recalculate our UTXOs, you'll see that I only have one UTXO left. So all of those things will go into the blockchain, but once you go through the blockchain, you'll see that they've all canceled each other out, or they've all fed into each other in a way. And the result for me is that I only have one UTXO left, 0.1 BTC. And that is considered my balance. Kind of like, there is no balance, but you can think of it as a balance, but it's actually a UTXO. So there you go. That's how transactions and UTXOs work. I know this might still be vague, might not be like, it might take some time to get your head around this. So maybe we'll definitely talk about this in the next tutorial and the one after that. So there's 2 more tutorials of practice. Don't worry, coming up, everything will be clear for sure. But in the meantime, if you want to practice yourself, then just make something up like I did here, as if somebody sent you money. Look at the UTXOs, think of something you want to buy, and see how you build that transaction. Do it a couple times. It'll really help to get your head around it. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next tutorial, and we'll continue with the journey. On that note, I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, enjoy blockchains.